We're going to talk about vSphere Web Client yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's a little vague sort of title, but you'll see what we get into it. First, a disclaimer. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. Some of them are going to be already released. Some of them are going to be coming in the very near future. And some of them may or may not ship ever again. We label those tech preview things because we need to cover our butts for legal reasons. So, agenda. First thing we're going to talk about is HTML5. Thank you.
By the way.
The next thing we're going to talk about is vSphere 6. So there's a lot of improvements in vSphere 6. Not everybody's on top of it. But, you know, we want to introduce it to you. And then we're going to talk about the future.
Actually, before starting, who are you?
Oh, yeah. I totally didn't introduce myself. Oops. My name's Dennis Liu. You can see my name on the first slide. Hey, they put you first. What's up with that?
I don't know.
I know you're taller,
I guess European
more
goes
pretty.
first.
Oh, come on. B? I've lived with that for my whole life, being L. You know, you're always in the middle, whether you go forwards or backwards. So I'm Dennis Liu. I'm the product manager for vSphere Web Client. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. This is Yavor Boychev. He's R&D manager on the web client, visiting from Sofia, Bulgaria, so forgive him if he falls asleep during the middle of the presentation. Back to the agenda. Thank you for reminding me,
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
So today, everything we're going to talk about is built around feedback from all of you, from all of our customers. Every single point we're going to talk about is going to be based around something that I hesitate to use the word complain, but somebody complained about, and that we tried to improve. The first thing, I said we're going to talk about Flash/HTML5. You've probably heard about it already in the sessions today, or yesterday, or you saw it a couple weeks ago. We launched an H5 host client fling. The host client is centered around being able to debug your vCenter when it goes down, because, hey, what are you going to do when vCenter's down? You can't debug itself, right? It's super fast, super awesome, super easy to use. You just point a browser at your host and it logs right in. They've been revving this really fast. So I think the first version launched 3 weeks ago. Yep. And then last week they launched version 2 with more functionality, more support, all those kinds of things. This one is marked as a fling. You can see it at the top right. I want to highlight that because that officially means not supported. We do hope to productize it sometime in the future. I don't know if I'm supposed to say near or far or whatever for this one. But if you have more questions about that, we've got the PM for that. He's here. He'd love your feedback, so please try that fling out. So the next slide is the touchy one. So HTML5 web client. We're working on it very actively. I can't promise any dates. I'm going to click this one more time, and you're going to see something. It's going to say tech preview, and that's what that means, is we can't promise when it's going to come, what's going to be in it, if it's ever going to ship. But we're working on it, and I'm going to show you this, which is the screenshot of what we've got so far. It has a lot of the bones there. A lot of the stuff is shared with the HTML5 host client. As you can imagine, so many things in the web client are just repeated stampings of the same UI widgets. So we've got to build that entire base before we can really finish the rest of it. This I got just on Friday. Every day we're adding something new. So they said, wait until the very last day that you can give me to get a screenshot. Just to point out, if you look at the top left corner, if you can read it, it says H5 client. That is not going to be the name of the thing, but it might be for all I know. We have not decided. Tech preview, yeah, that's right, tech preview. Thank you for whoever started that, hopefully not a VMware employee. But the first thing we're going to talk about, so vSphere 6 launched back in March, I think, and it was really nice. If anybody that's tried vSphere 6 web client versus vSphere 5.5 web client, you notice that we put a lot of work into it and a lot of improvements. So I actually created a Twitter account to go find feedback from people about vSphere 6, because kind of sometimes it's hard. It wasn't VMworld time frame. We couldn't go out and ask a bunch of people. But I highlighted some of the responses that we got on Twitter. People actually use the word love. People use the word improved. And probably a year ago, you never would have imagined anybody would ever say that about the web client. But it's real. These aren't like paid spokespeople or anything like that. So next, Yavor is going to talk about a lot of the changes engineering made for vSphere 6.
Yep. So one of the feedback that we've heard loud and clear from customers is that it's hard to find your way around in the web client. And the first improvement that I would like to talk about that we have introduced in vSphere Web Client version 6 is with regards to a challenge that we have identified with users of the web client actually doing a lot of up and down navigation. What I mean by up and down navigation is that, for example, if you need to take a look at a particular host configuration, you would start from the home page of the web client, go several levels deep to the particular host page, and from over there do your job. And now, if you need to change context and go to a storage view, for example, you would go back to the home page, and from over there drill down again to the corresponding storage view. This is obviously a suboptimal user experience. It involves a bit of unnecessary clicks while you're doing your way around in the web client. So in vSphere 6,
yeah, you got to point it this way. It's IR, apparently.
all right. So in vSphere 6, what we have done is we have added a shortcut between different inventory views. That shortcut is available upon hovering on the home button. And from over there, it's only one click away to go from hosts and clusters to virtual machines and templates, from virtual machines and templates to storage, from storage to networking. Anything that is actually available on the home page is now available in this shortcut. This will reduce the number of clicks while you're navigating around the web client. And it will also reduce the need for you to go so many times to the home page. Now, another challenge that we've heard, again, loud and clear from our users, is that you have troubles working with the action menus in the vSphere web client. And more particularly, that you need to go several levels deep in order to find an action that is pretty common from an administration point of view. As an example, if you need to power off a virtual machine, in vSphere 5.5 and previous versions, you would need to go to all vCenter actions, right-click on a virtual machine, then all vCenter actions, then power, and from over there, power off. Now, this is not only too many levels deep in order to reach a common action such as power off, but it is also kind of confusing. Why certain actions, such as powering off a virtual machine, are buried several levels deep, and other actions, similar in semantics, such as power on virtual machine, are promoted and are readily available on the first level of the action menu. In vSphere 6, we have significantly reduced the complexity of the action menus. We have flattened them, and we have grouped similar actions in semantics together. Now the action menus look a lot more familiar to you, especially for those of you who are used with the legacy VI client. And again, the same example. Now, if you need to power off a virtual machine, you would right-click on a virtual machine, you will go to power, and from over there, you have all the power operations right next to each other. Makes a lot more sense. Now, next improvement that we've done in vSphere 6 is probably one of my favorites. And it is because it is quite simple one, especially from an engineering point of view, but it amazingly brings a lot of value for our users. So in vSphere 5.5 and previous versions, there was a twofold problem with the recent tasks. So on one hand, it was hard to troubleshoot recent tasks because of the limited amount of real estate that was provided, and also limited amount of data. And on the other hand, they were not simply placed where users expect them to be. So again, in vSphere 6, we've listened to you. We've simply moved the recent tasks down at the bottom of the web client. This automatically gave us, thank you. Yeah, I don't see it. It's simple. This automatically gives us more real estate. We fed that real estate with more data, and now it's a lot more easier for you to troubleshoot a failed recent task, for example. in the same direction of improvement, something really cool that we've done, again, in vSphere Web Client version 6, is that we actually now give you the ability to modify the web client in terms of layout. You can move things around and place them where you think they belong. So you can click on a pane, drag it, drag it, drag it, and you can place it again where you think it belongs. So in this particular example, we've moved the alarms and the work in progress pane on the bottom right corner of the web client. And actually, this is a really valid use case because, as you see, it automatically gives the virtual machines data grid more real estate, and you can see more columns, all of the columns of the virtual machines. Another example, and this is more extreme, you can actually drag the navigation tree on your right. This is more useful, I assume, for people working with their left hand. And also, again, if you change too many things around, you always have the opportunity to bring the web client to the default layout settings. Now, we've covered some of the fixes and improvements that we've done with the navigation model in the web client. Another very hot topic is the performance and the responsiveness of the web client. This is an area where the engineering team have been spending a lot of time and effort, and I'll be showcasing some of the improvements we've done in the vSphere web client. I have chosen to highlight two of them, the ones that our users have been more vocal about, and we have done really good improvement. We've been doing this with videos, and we'll be comparing the performance of the vSphere web client in version 5.5 with the one in version vSphere 6. So the first use case is about the time needed for the summary views to load. Something that is very important to our users because they navigate to summary views really often. So what you're going to see on the screen is a video of a user clicking on 5 different objects in the inventory view and loading, waiting for the summary view page to load completely. The timer on the top calculates the total time needed for the summary pages to load. It doesn't get the time for moving around the different objects.
Come on, it doesn't even move that fast.
And that's even vSphere 5.5. I even didn't tweak the video. So in vSphere 5.5, it takes about a bit more than 13 seconds to load the summary views of 5 different objects in the inventory view. Now on the right will be vSphere 6, and the same actions performed. Even without looking at the timer above, it's obviously faster. And when this finishes, it's going to finish on about a little bit more than 5 seconds for 5 objects. So that makes roughly about 2 times performance improvement. The next use case, again, something that, well, we've heard loud and clear, and it's how much time it gets for the action menu to get loaded. And this is vSphere 5.5, and you click, and I can actually drink water now. Yeah, I know, it's funny for you. It's not for me, because I've been working in this team. Now on the right, vSphere 6. And look carefully because it's going to be fast. Click. Click. There you go. Half a second. Well, we're not done yet. We're going to improve it even further. But this is, what, 12, 13 times improvement? So in terms of performance improvements, as I said, I'm showcasing 2 use cases, but we've done performance improvements all over the place of the application. We've touched areas such as virtual machines, we've touched the host pages, we've touched networking, storage, everywhere. Some of those performance improvements are with the same magnitude, some are even bigger, some are smaller. performance charts. Go take a look at those if you haven't done before because they were too slow. Now they are actually usable, and they load pretty fast. The good thing about those performance improvements is that, again, we are continuing to work on those. We're going to bring more of them. And those performance improvements, actually, a lot of those are not even relevant in terms of the technology being used. So they will kick in pretty well with the future web client on H5 when it comes out. Now, switching context really fast and going from performance and usability improvements in vSphere 6 to features that are actually available on vSphere 5.5 and previous versions. Can I get a show of hands of how many of you are running vSphere 5.5? Pretty much like 80% of the room. This is why we are showcasing this. I mean, this is not new stuff, but actually we figured out that a lot of those features are actually not familiar to you. You don't know about them. So I'm not sure how many of you actually know that you can do batch operations on objects in the vSphere web client. Not all the actions are available in batch, but the most important ones, such as in this case, powering off virtual machines on multiple virtual machines is available. You go shift-click, select multiple virtual machines, and you execute the action. This is the first feature that I would like to highlight. The second one, history button. History button works exactly as the history in your browser. One click to go back, right click to see more recent navigations, and click on the right-hand arrow to forward navigate. Right next to the history button is the recent objects button. Actually, not much of you actually know that this is a button. But when you click on it, you see the last 10 visited objects from you. Something that is cool, those are persisted across user sessions. So if you go home and you don't remember what you've been working on, you click on it and you see the last 10 objects that you've been working with. Number 4. This is a wizard, screenshot of a wizard. And some of the wizards in the web client, and actually in the legacy VI client too, they're lengthy. They require you to put some data in it. And it will be really unfortunate for you if in the middle of the wizard, you need to cease your work. You get an emergency call, you need to go home, or you need to get to work, or actually you need to get some more data that you don't have readily available for you, and you need to put and provide in the wizard. Rather than canceling the wizard and start it all over again, you can minimize the wizard in the so-called work in progress area. And from over there, you can pick it up and continue from where you left off. Again, this is persistent across user sessions. And something that actually makes this feature really valuable is that if in the meantime, while you have been away, some of the data becomes irrelevant. Some of the data that you have already put in the wizard becomes irrelevant. Once you pick it up, we'll focus your attention over there. So you need to change it rather than go through the end of the wizard, click finish, and it fails with, the parameter you have provided is not correct. Last but not least, and I've heard yesterday on the host client session, this was one of the favorite features. It was tweeted about, that you can actually bookmark pages in the web client. After all, it's a web application, so you can book any page in the web client you want. Couple of use cases. If there is a place, a navigation, that is really hard for you to remember where it is, you can bookmark it. If you need to show a particular configuration to a colleague of yours, you can bookmark it, send it over email, rather than sending long explanation, click here, click there, etc. So those were the 5 features which I think are really useful and we wanted to highlight. And something that Dennis liked to do is, how many of you actually knew all 5 of those features? like 5 people in the audience for 5 features. That's cool. That means that this is useful. A quick recap of what we have covered so far. The bright and shiny future of the web client in terms of moving to H5 sooner or later. We've covered the performance and usability improvements that we have done in vSphere 6.0. And because 80% of the people in this room are on 5.5, well, it's good to upgrade to 6.0. I'm working at VMware. But if you're not planning to upgrade to vSphere 6 anytime soon, you can actually pick up the performance improvements that I was showcasing and all of those in 5.5 update 3, which we are supposed to say
End of the quarter. By the end of this quarter.
by the end of?
This quarter.
By the end of this quarter. That makes it soon. And again, as an engineering manager, I would say that now the web client is a lot more performant, a lot more responsive. I wouldn't say that we are yet on par with your expectations, so we are continuing to work on it. And we will bring more performance improvements, and we will bring more usability improvements in the web client. And actually, a few of those are going to come soon, and Dennis will talk about this.
Thanks, Yavor. Hopefully you like these too. You won't get to see them as fast because you could go home and use the 5.5 features right now. But first, the issue that we're going to address is about feature parity with the VI client / C# client / desktop client / vSphere client for Windows. I don't know what
legacy client.
/ legacy client / fat client / old client. Use your favorite term. I think I've gone through all of the ones I know.
Deprecated too.
Well, that's a completely different thing that we're not going to talk about right now. So one of the problems that we've heard about the web client, especially with 5.5, it's slightly improved in 6.0, but it's still going to be a little bit of a problem, is looking at your recent tasks and your alarms. With the transition to the web client, one of the main goals we had was achieving a greater scale. So 100 users logged into vCenter at the same time instead of the 5 or 10 that you could get with a desktop client. Turns out that live refresh of things like alarms and tasks is a very, very bad thing for the vCenter. It can actually crash your vCenter with the old client.
The white screen of death.
White screen of death, he's told me. In 6.0 Update 1, we're bringing a version of live update of tasks and alarms into the web client. And the first question is, well, isn't that just going to crash the VC anyways? But no, it's a different implementation, very performant. It should potentially actually be better performing than if you just turn the refresh timer down. So for example, in vSphere 6, we offer the ability to change the refresh timer on recent tasks. I think you can go from 60-second default down to 10 seconds. But the way it does that is it continuously polls the vCenter. That's not a great way of doing anything. This is a completely different implementation. If you want to talk about it later, you can ask Yavor after the presentation.
Ask Peter.
Oh, ask Peter. VUM. Where's VUM? Where's VUM in web client? I think I've heard this for the entire past year. Turns out in 6.0 Update 1, we're going to bring it into the web client. It's going to have full functionality. Every single workflow will be there. Not just the tiny amount of workflow that we already have in the web client, but everything. It should be very familiar to all users. If you've ever touched the web client and you've ever used VUM, you should be able to use VUM in web client. Thank you. So we do like to think at VMware that with the performance improvements in vSphere 6 and with VUM coming in 6.0 Update 1, we've achieved most of parity. But there are some customers that use custom attributes. And this is labeled Tech Preview, which means not 6.0 Update 1, which means may or may not ship. But Tech Preview means sometime in the future, probably, we're going to bring in custom attributes into the web client as well. It's going to have full functionality, edit, add, delete. Everything should be there. We understand that for those customers that do use custom attributes, this is like a deal breaker, right? You can't get rid of the original old client until we have this. The next thing we're going to cover, I'm going to go back to Yavor because he really, really loves this stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's where I get really passionate about. And The reason for it is because I'm going to talk about integration between Power CLI and the vSphere web client. A quick show of hands, how many of you are using Power CLI? Probably half of the room. So for those of you who are using Power CLI, you should probably remember the famous project Onyx. For those of you who don't know what is Onyx or you don't remember, Onyx is a plugin for the VI client, for /.NET client /legacy client, that works as a tunneling proxy between the client and the Virtual Center server, which allows you to record the actions and the steps that you do in the client and generate the corresponding Power CLI script. Once you've got this Power CLI script, you can tweak it here and there, put some parameters, make it reusable script, and use it for automation purposes later on. Now, the problem with the Onyx is that since we released it several years ago, it has been always a plugin for the VI client. And when I say plugin for the VI client, again, Flink, which means officially not supported, but actually it's release quality. Now, the good news is, in the past year, we have been working really closely with the Power CLI team, and a couple of months back, we have introduced Onyx for the vSphere web client. It looks pretty much the same way. It has all the functionality. If you want to learn more about it, one, you can find it in labs vmware.com/flink/Onyx for the vSphere web client. Or you can go down to the hang space in the CTO booth, and you can see an Onyx demo over there for the vSphere web client. Next, when we talk about integration between Power CLI and the vSphere web client, Power Actions is my favorite. And again, for those of you who are not aware what Power Actions is, this is two things. It allows you to integrate, actually, it's a plugin for the vSphere web client, and on one hand, it gives you an integrated, interactive Power CLI console straight into the vSphere web client. So for those of you who are using Power CLI, think about it. That means that you can use Power CLI and PowerShell on a Mac machine because it runs in the browser. You can execute any command, and you can review the results out of it right over there in the web client integrated. But Power Actions is more than that. Power Actions uses the extensibility model of the web client, and it allows you to extend any object in the web client with custom actions and reports. So you can go right-click on a virtual machine, for example, say I want to create a new custom action with Power CLI. You write a Power CLI script, or you just get it from the Power CLI community, save it, and you can save it either just for yourself and sharing with anybody who is using the web client and who has the permissions. And next time when you touch a virtual machine and right-click, this action will be right over there for you. Again, this, I think we announced this a couple of years back in Barcelona on VMworld a couple of years back. Why we are touching on it again? Because in the last several weeks, we have done an important new version release of it that actually now supports vSphere 6 and Microsoft.NET version 4.5, which was a longly anticipated feature from our users. Again, go give it a try, labs.vmware.com/flinks/poweractions for the web client. And give us your feedback, because if we want to do this as officially supported functionality, then we will need to have some more input in it. When we talk about things that are only, excuse me, which are only available in the vSphere web client, how to deploy an image builder. I'm not going to go in details explaining what how to deploy an image builder is, but there was a problem with how to deploy an image builder that they didn't have full functional user interfaces. You needed to manage those with Power CLI, and actually how to deploy did have a Flink for the VI client as a plugin, but its support ends up somewhere between 5.1 and 5.5. The good news is, tech preview, we're bringing full functionality about how to deploy an image builder in the web client. Again, because of the format of this session, I cannot commit to a particular release or time frame, but what you see on the screen is a screenshot from my lab back home in Bulgaria, and it's fully functional and works, and it's great. Next, something else that VMware is working on. Socialcast integration with the vSphere web client. And you probably know that Socialcast is VMware's social enterprise networking platform.
Enterprise social networking / collaboration.
Okay. Now you have an application, Socialcast application for your mobile phone, that if you link Socialcast with Virtual Center Server, you can actually get notifications about changes in your environment, your objects, through Socialcast. What the Socialcast team and the vSphere web client team together are working on is bringing a Socialcast within the web client, a portlet on the summary pages that you can actually monitor Socialcast streams, messages, alarms, right over there in the web client on a portlet of a particular object. Again, this is tech preview, which means, yeah, sometime in the future. And again, something that we didn't have for the VI client is a single place where you can actually look at all the plugins available for the VI client. Now we have this for the vSphere web client. If you go to the Solution Exchange web page, there is a dedicated link submenu for the web client plugins. Click on it, and you're going to see pretty much all the plugins created, supported from our partners ecosystem. Oh, somebody's tweeting about our session. Good. All right, myself and Dennis, we've been talking for quite a while. And now we would like to make this a little bit more interactive and actually get your feedback about some ideas that we have. And since Dennis is our product manager, and he's been creating this polling stuff, Dennis, can you explain us how does it work and what's it going to talk about?
So you probably already have your phone out. Maybe if you can stop taking photos and or stop playing games for at least, let's say 5-10 minutes. And just text the word web client, one word, I think upper lowercase doesn't matter, to the number 22333. Or if you've got your computer or you prefer web interface, you can go to pollev.com/web client. We're going to ask a couple questions coming up in the next few slides just to get feedback. This whole rest of the section is about gathering feedback from you so that we know where to take the direction of the product. So first, we're actually going to go with, let's call it a test question. So the registration instructions are still up there. Hopefully you can read it. The screens are pretty big.
I'm going to answer too.
Don't. That's going to skew the results.
Some features in.
So basically, for this question, we have 4 possible responses, A, B, C, D. Don't respond yet. I need to describe them pretty clearly. So if you are currently on vSphere 5.5, production test doesn't really matter, and you use the web client as your first primary client, please respond A. If you instead use the desktop client or the VI client as your primary client, please respond B. Now, for those of you that are on vSphere 6, wasn't very many, I guess. It's the same thing, but if you're using web client primarily, respond C. If you're still using the desktop client, first of all, boo, hiss, or something. Respond D. I'll give you a few, 30 seconds to try and respond. I've got it on my phone, so I'm not like looking at scores or anything like that. I'm just looking at the responses.
Good.
Very interesting. Okay, so just keep responding if you can. We're going to move on to the next one. I'm going to leave that poll open for a little while, close it after the slides. So the next part is the actual sneak peek into things that we're looking at for the future. First thing, as Yavor said, very importantly, we are not done improving the performance. This is probably the number 1 and 2 goals that's still on our plate. We're going to measure everything that we can think of and improve everything that we can think of. And in fact, desktop client is not the bar that we're aiming for. Their user experience has this nice long list of human interface reaction time type of list, and we're actually shooting for that bar. Desktop client is fast, and that's great, but we actually want to beat it. So I'm going to close that previous poll that we had, and hopefully this works for the next one. I'm opening, ooh, that was probably a bad idea. Okay, so the first feature we're going to talk about is web client upgrade. It's not very descriptive, but basically what it would allow you to do is instead of upgrading your entire vSphere installation or your entire vCenter installation, you would get something, you'd install it, and just upgrade your vSphere web client server. So you could get all the nice, pretty features that we're working on without touching any of your actual infrastructure that, you know, if it went down, you'd probably get yelled at a lot for. The example I always like to use for this is recent tasks. So Yavor mentioned earlier about moving recent tasks down to the bottom. We knew we had to do that, but it still took a significant vSphere release, probably 1.5 years or something like that to get it out. If we knew that we had to do it, we could probably get it out in a single quarter. You could upgrade and get it the way that you wanted. So you can read the options, but basically if you vote A, it's I don't care about this feature. If you vote B, it is I like this feature. And C is I really love this feature and I'd like to have it tomorrow. So please vote. I'm going to leave this open for a little while too.
Where's option D, take my money now?
let's call love it as take my money now as well. Yeah. This is a good idea. I'll put Fry up there next time. See, I knew that was. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one, leave that open for just a few more minutes. So this one we don't have a poll on. I'd like to space out the polls so that we don't get any overlaps. But basically, these are a couple UI enhancements that we are putting in right now. Recent objects pane. So Yavor mentioned the recent objects button, which is actually my favorite feature in the entire client because I did not know about it until somebody told me about it, and it just seemed awesome. Instead of leaving it as a little button that kind of looks like a refresh button and everybody's afraid to click, seriously, I heard that from a customer. I was like, you know, that makes a lot of sense. It does kind of look like a refresh button. And I really, really wouldn't want to click that. We're going to bring it out and put it in a pane of its own. So you can see that list change and grow as you're navigating around your environment. The other one is putting action buttons at the top, where you could actually perform actions on the object that you've selected instead of having to go back to the navigator, right-clicking on it, and doing that. So these would be the same actions that you would get when you see one of those lists, and we usually have actions across the top. We're looking at making that one configurable because we've heard from customers before that, hey, you know, if you put it up there and I accidentally click on it, what's going to happen? I'm going to like shut down my host. The next thing, we do have a poll, so don't vote yet. Sorry, I should disable this. Okay, hopefully that worked. We're going to open this poll up next, and we're calling this go-to menu. So the go-to menu, you can see it on the screen. It may not necessarily make sense immediately, but it's a faster way of accessing your object subtabs. So you would right-click on your object. Near the top there, you'd have something called go-to, name TBD. That's just sort of a placeholder for now. And then you'd see the tab structure for that object. So for example, here, the user clicked on a VM, and they went to the Manage tab, and they're looking at the subtabs within Manage. So if you want to go to the tags for that VM, or you want to go to the permissions or policies for that VM, you can go straight to it just by right-clicking on it. This could, in theory, save 2 or 3 page loads, which, of course, helps, and 2 or 3 clicks, which also helps. Again, vote A, don't care, B, like it, C, love it, / take my money now. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to leave that poll open for a few more, half-minute or something, but we're going to talk about a different feature, so you can keep voting on the previous one. Related Objects tab in the vSphere web client was a big shift from the desktop client. Even those that have used it, we've had some customers that sort of just ignore it, thinking, I don't know what a related object is, I'm not going to click on that tab. Well, in the desktop client, we used to have objects each have its own tab going across the top. We're thinking about bringing that back so that you could see you have tabs for hosts, VMs, data stores, and networks. Peter from the user experience team described to me this very well. He said, we're still going to have subtabs. You can see that we're on hosts, but you can actually see hosts and resource pools. So basically what that is it mirrors the structure of the trees. So when you're on the tree tab, you can see hosts, and you can see clusters, and you can see resource pools. So you'd actually know exactly where the objects go in these master tabs and subtabs. You can also see at the bottom of where we've placed some of the ones that we are intending on doing. And now I'm going to remember to close the previous poll before we go to the next slide. Another thing we're looking at doing is action labels. We have a lot of icons for a lot of actions, and a lot of them, I don't want to say don't make any sense, but they are not intuitive necessarily. And every time you don't know what that one does, you got to hover over it, wait half a second, wait a second, wait for that tooltip to pop up. Instead, we're just going to put the words up there. It should be very easy. You should just be able to recognize most of the actions now when the words, at least even 5 to 10 letters are there for you. No vote on this one either. But if you do, yeah. Ah. Yes, thank you. Peter, you heard that, right?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Yeah.
So that is actually something that we tried to do with vSphere 6 as well. We tried to add more configuration options in the web client properties file. So for a lot of these, we're going to look at the same thing, especially when it's something like this where we're changing the behavior from something that existed, as opposed to with like the go-to menu where it's completely new, you don't have a basis of change.
And for the audience on the back, the question was whether we can make these configurable.
Good catch. So we have one more poll, and I'm going to open it now, but don't vote until I describe it, which I probably shouldn't open the poll for you yet. So we have this button. You can see a little magnifying glass that's highlighted over there. It's called Hover Search. Again, name pending, TBD, may or may not ship ever anyways. Basically, you can see that when you click that magnifying glass, you see the tab and subtab structure blown out for this object. You also see a filter search area. So if you type the word boot, for example, it will bring up in that object all of the sections and settings that have the word boot in them. Or if you search for the word memory, same thing. You get the results for anything that has the word memory in it. Now, this is sort of the opposite of the go-to menu, where if you knew where you're going, you could get there fast. This is if you don't know where you're going, you can find it really fast. Vote, don't care, like it, love it on this one as well. I'm not supposed to influence your responses. I was told, very warned about this. I'm not a user researcher, so I do this pretty bad sometimes. Let's see. I'm going to give you another 10, 15 seconds just in case that people need to respond, because actually we might as well go forward. So in closing, just to wrap up our agenda, we talked about HTML5 first, because we know that that was a big thing. We talked about vSphere 6 improvements. You know this slide deck is going to be available, so you can download it and refer to the stuff that we showed. And then the cool new stuff, that's obviously not going to show up as well. We're going to do Q&A, but the first thing I want to get to is this wiki. So about a year ago, I created this wiki on Wikibooks. You can access it at tiny.cc/webclientwiki. It has all those 5.5 features that we showed and the 6.0 features that we showed. They're on this wiki page. If you find it useful, or if you find any tips about using the web client, or about something of the backend server, or maybe even there's a section about going from the desktop client to the web client and telling you where things have moved, please add it. This should be crowdsourced type of material. That's what a wiki is for. I want to say, so there's this thank you slide, so thank you everybody for coming. And please fill out the survey for these sessions. I guess you get into a drawing for money. I'm going to go back and put this slide back up so you can see the URL.